6. That is how many new Jaguars were registered in Britain in January. Not 6,000. 6. The same month the year before, it was 783. That is a fall of more than 99%. And the number does not come from a newspaper. It comes from the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, the industry counting itself. There are streets in this country with more Jaguars parked on them than the entire brand sold in Britain that month. And here is the part that makes it worse. This did not happen to Jaguar. Jaguar did it to itself. It stopped building cars deliberately. It deleted its own history from the internet overnight. It took the leaping cat off the bonnet, and then it released a 30-second advert to announce the new Jaguar, and there was not a single car anywhere in it. For the first time since the Second World War, you could walk into a Jaguar showroom in Britain and find nothing there to buy. This is the story of how a company that won Le Mans 5 times, that built the car Enzo Ferrari called the most beautiful ever made, ended up selling 6 cars in a month in its own country. And if there is a Jaguar sitting on your driveway right now, stay with me to the end, because there is something under the bonnet of a great many of them that you need to know about. And what happens over the next 12 months decides what yours is worth. Let us start with the advert, because that is where most people first realized something had gone badly wrong. The 18th of November 2024, Jaguar deleted its entire social media history. Every post, every photograph. Decades of cars, races, launches, and customers gone in an afternoon. The next day, the new Jaguar was revealed. The leaping cat, which had sat on the bonnet of Jaguars for the best part of a century, was removed from the main branding. In its place, a plain wordmark, lowercase letters mixed with capitals, which the company said created visual harmony. New slogans came with it: delete ordinary, live vivid, create exuberant, break molds, and above all of them, the phrase they built the whole campaign around: copy nothing. Then the advert itself. Models in bright futuristic clothing walking through pink and yellow abstract landscapes, and no car. Not one, not a wheel, not a badge, not a headlight, nothing that would tell you this was an advertisement for a car company at all. If you had come to it cold, you would have guessed it was for a fashion label, or a perfume, or a pair of trainers. You would not have guessed Jaguar. The reaction was immediate, and it was enormous. The video was seen by over 100 million people within 48 hours. Not because it was loved, because it was shared over and over by people who could not believe what they had just watched. Elon Musk replied to it with 4 words: "Do you sell cars?" That question became the most repeated response on the internet that week. A German newspaper ran a reader poll. Of nearly 18,000 people who voted, 93% said the rebrand was unsettling and that it had nothing left to do with Jaguar. The criticism all landed in the same place. A car company had launched an advert with no cars in it at the exact moment it needed to persuade people to wait more than a year for cars that did not yet exist. 2 weeks later, Jaguar doubled down. At Miami Art Week in December 2024, they revealed the Type 00, a concept car meant to preview everything that was coming next. It was shown in 2 colors, Miami pink and London blue. The design was long, low, and severe, with a bonnet that seemed to go on forever, and almost none of the softness people associated with the mark. The reaction online compared it to a Barbie car, to a Cybertruck, and to an air conditioning vent. Jaguar's managing director defended it. He said the brand needed to stop blending in, that it was acceptable to be polarizing, that this was a complete renaissance perhaps. But there was one problem that no amount of confidence could solve. You could not buy any of it. Not the Type 000, and not anything else with a Jaguar badge on it. Because by then, Jaguar had already stopped making cars. Now, to understand why any of this matters, you have to understand what Jaguar actually was. And I do not mean as a brand. I mean as a thing this country built. It starts in Blackpool in 1922 with motorcycle sidecars. William Lyons was 21 years old, the son of a man who sold musical instruments on the Lancashire coast. He was far more interested in engines than in pianos. He had done an engineering apprenticeship in Manchester, come home and taken a job selling cars. and near his parents' house, he saw a motorcycle sidecar that a neighbor had built out of surplus army parts. It was beautifully made. Lyons bought one on the spot and then talked the man who built it into going into business. Their fathers guaranteed £500 at the bank. On the 4th of September 1922, the Swallow Sidecar Company opened above a shop on Bloomfield Road. 3 employees and a boy. On a good week, they finished one sidecar. Lyons had one idea that never changed, and it is the idea the whole company was built on. He wanted his vehicles to look like they cost 3 times what they actually did. By 1927, they had moved from sidecars to car bodies. The first was built on an Austin 7, and it cost £175. But with its two-tone paint and its low, sleek shape, it looked like something a wealthy man would step out of. The orders came in faster than Blackpool could build them, 2 cars a day against orders for 500. So in 1928, Lyons moved the whole operation to Coventry, the center of the British motor industry. Around 50 people packed up their lives and went with him. In Coventry, they began building complete cars. And in 1935, Lyons chose a name for the new model. He wanted something that meant power and grace and speed. He chose Jaguar. There is one more piece to that story, and it is not often told. The company at the time was called SS Cars. Before the war, those 2 letters meant nothing in particular. After it, they meant something no British company could carry. So, in March 1945, at a shareholders' meeting, Lyons changed the company's name. From then on, it was Jaguar Cars Limited. He told the room the name was distinctive and could not be confused with anything foreign, and what he did next was the greatest run any British carmaker has ever had. 1948, the London Motor Show. Jaguar showed a car called the XK120, intended only as a one-off, a way of showing off a new engine. That engine had been designed during the war, sketched out by Jaguar engineers on firewatch duty, between looking up at the sky for German bombers. The XK120 could reach 133 miles per hour. It was the fastest production car in the world. The reaction was so strong that Jaguar put it into full production. Then came the racing. The Type arrived in 1951, built for endurance, and it won the 24 Hours of Le Mans that same year. The D-Type followed and won Le Mans 3 years running in 55, 56, and 57 against Ferrari, Maserati, and Aston Martin. 5 wins at Le Mans in a decade by a company that had been building sidecars above a shop 30 years earlier. And this is the part that matters. The engine winning those races was a version of the same engine sitting under the bonnet of the cars Jaguar sold to ordinary people. When you bought a Jaguar in the 9150s, you were buying something with lemon in its bloodline. Almost no manufacturer on earth could say that. Then, in March 1961, at the Geneva Motor Show, came the car that settled it forever, the E-Type. It so nearly did not arrive at all. The car was finished so late that Jaguar's test driver had to drive it overnight from Coventry to Geneva and got there with minutes to spare. It did not matter. It stopped the show. The shape came from a man called Malcolm C., who had spent the war at the Bristol Aeroplane Company and who designed cars the way he designed wings, wind tunnels, mathematics. He refused to be called a stylist. He said he was an engineer. The IPE could do 150 miles per hour. It had disc brakes on all 4 wheels, and it cost around £2,250, which was roughly half the price of a comparable Ferrari. That was Lyons' idea in its purest form. Grace and speed and engineering for people who were not millionaires. Frank Sinatra bought one. So did Steve McQueen. Nearly 79,000 were built. Lyons was conned in 1956 for his services to British industry. He had built the whole thing from a rented room above a shop. Now, before we get to what went wrong, do something for me. If you have ever owned a Jaguar of any kind at any age, type the number 1 in the comments. Just the number 1. I would like to see how many of us there are. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do. It is free. It takes a second, and it is the only thing that keeps these videos being made, because from here, the story turns. Through the 1960s, Jaguar's independence disappeared. A merger in 1966 pulled it into a larger group. That group became British Land in 1968. And in 1975, British Leyland was nationalized. For Jaguar, this was suffocating. Quality control collapsed. Investment dried up. The factory that had built the IPE was now run by the same organization that produced the Austin Allegro. The cars of the 1970s still looked like Jaguars from the outside. Underneath, too many of them fell apart. Electrical faults, rust, breakdowns, the reliability became a running joke in the British press. And that reputation followed the brand for the next 30 years. Jaguar was cut loose from British land in 1984 and floated on the London Stock Exchange. It had 5 years of independence. Then in 1989, Ford bought it. The Ford years are complicated. Ford put serious money into Jaguar's engineering and its factories, and the quality genuinely improved. The cars of the 90s and 2000s were far better built than what came before. But Jaguar never made money for Ford. Not consistently. It stayed a prestige piece that cost more to run than it brought in, and when the financial crisis arrived in 2008, Ford needed cash badly and put it up for sale. The buyer was Tata Motors of India, who bought Jaguar and Land Rover together for $2.3 billion in cash. At the time, the motor industry was skeptical. Tata was best known for building the cheapest car in the world. People asked whether a company that built a $2,000 city car could look after Jaguar. The answer for a long time was yes. Under Tata, billions went into new models and new factories. Land Rover became enormously profitable, and Jaguar got real investment for the first time in decades. The F-Type arrived in 2013, and journalists called it the spiritual successor to the E-Type. The XE and XF took Jaguar back into the market against BMW and Mercedes. And the F-Pace, launched in 2016, became the best-selling Jaguar almost immediately. By the end of that decade, Jaguar was selling over 180,000 cars a year worldwide. In 2018, it launched the I-Pace, an electric SUV that won World Car of the Year. Whatever came next, it was not a company on its knees. What came next was a plan called Reimagine, announced in 2021. Jaguar would become entirely electric. Every petrol and diesel model would be discontinued, and the brand would move up market to compete not with BMW and Mercedes, but with Bentley and Porsche at more than double the price. Read that again, because the powertrain is the least of it. Jaguar was changing its price, its market, its customer, and its identity all at once. The people who had bought Jaguars for 30 years, professionals who wanted something quick and handsome that they could actually afford, were not being brought along. They were being replaced, and then came the decision that turned a risky plan into this. They stopped building everything before anything new was ready. The company called it a fire break. In the summer of 2024, production of the XE, the XF, and the F-Type ended at Castle Bromwich in Birmingham. The last F-Type, the car sold as the heir to the E-Type, came off the line, and that was that. The E-Pace and I-Pace ended in December, and the F-Pace, the bestseller, the car outselling everything else Jaguar made put together, was the last one out of the door. From November 2024, Jaguar stopped supplying new cars to the United Kingdom altogether. Dealers were told to concentrate on used cars and servicing. The managing director admitted openly that there would be a period when you simply could not buy a Jaguar. That period is still going on. Think about what that meant for the dealers. Some of them had sold Jaguars for 40 years. Some had just spent a great deal of money refitting their showrooms, ready for the electric relaunch they had been promised. And then there was nothing to put in them. No cars, no test drives, no delivery dates. Just pictures of a pink concept car and a request for patience. Customers walked in, asked what was available, and were told nothing was. Many of them walked out and bought a German car instead. That is not a failure of marketing. That is a customer you do not get back. And here is what makes it so hard to defend. Nobody else did it this way. BMW brought out the i4 and the iiX without taking the 3 Series off sale. Mercedes put its electric technology into the cars it already sold. Audi launched a whole electric range while keeping the A4 and the Q5 in showrooms. All of them grew their electric sales while keeping their existing customers. They gave people a bridge. Jaguar gave them a cliff. Then the numbers came in. April 2025. Across the whole of Europe, Jaguar registered 49 cars. In the same month, a year earlier, it was 1,961, a fall of 97.12%. Globally, Jaguar sold 26,862 cars in the financial year to March 2025. At its peak in 2018, it sold over 180,000. That is a drop of 85% in 7 years. And then this January, in Britain, 6. Now, in fairness, Jaguar has an answer to all of this, and you should hear it. The company says these numbers are exactly what it expected. It stopped production deliberately. You cannot sell cars you are not building. The collapse was planned, not suffered. And there is something in that. The parent company Jaguar Land Rover made a record profit of £2.5 billion in the 2025 financial year, carried by Land Rover. This is not a business that has run out of money. But planning a fall does not make it painless, and the people who ran it have not survived it. In May 2025, Jaguar sacked the advertising agency behind the rebrand, despite having a contract that ran another year. Later that year, the chief executive who oversaw Reimagine retired after 35 years with the company. His replacement came from Tata Motors. And on the 2nd of December, exactly 1 year to the day after the pink concept car was revealed in Miami, the chief creative officer was dismissed with immediate effect after 21 years. Industry reports said he was escorted out of the building. He was the man who had designed the Range Rover Evoque and the Defender, two of the most commercially successful vehicles the group ever built. He was also the man responsible for the rebrand. And there is one more thing that happened which very few people outside the industry noticed. In late August 2025, Jaguar Land Rover was hit by a cyber attack. The company shut down its entire global computer network, and on the 1st of September, manufacturing stopped completely. Not just Jaguar. All of it, Land Rover too. In the final 3 months of that year, the group built 59,200 vehicles. The year before, it had been 104,400. And because Jaguar Land Rover is the biggest car manufacturer in this country, total British vehicle production fell by more than 15% across the whole year. One attack on one company and the national figure moved. Now, before we get to what your Jaguar is worth, there is something under the bonnet of a great many of them that you need to know about, because Jaguar has an engine problem of its own, and a lot of owners are driving around with no idea. In 2015, Jaguar Land Rover introduced a new family of engines called Ingenium. Built in Wolverhampton, designed in-house and fitted to almost everything the company made, the 2-lit diesel version went into the XE, the XF, the E-Pace, and the F-Pace. It also went into the Discovery Sport, the Evoque, the Vela, and the Defender. If you own a diesel Jaguar built from 2015 onwards, this is almost certainly what you have got. Now, this engine uses a timing chain rather than a belt, and a chain is supposed to be the good option. A belt has to be replaced every few years. A chain, in theory, lasts the life of the engine. In practice, on this one, a great many of them have not. The chains stretch. The plastic guides they run against wear down and shed debris into the oil. The tensioners weaken, and once the chain has stretched far enough, the valve timing slips out of position. The first sign is very specific, and if you know it, you have time. It is a metallic rattle when you start the engine from cold. A few seconds, sometimes less, and then it clears as the oil pressure builds. It is worst on a cold, damp morning, first start of the day. A great many people hear it for months and assume it is just a diesel being a diesel. It is not. That is the chain slapping against the guides. It usually appears somewhere between 60 and 80,000 miles. Two things make it worse, and both of them are common: long service intervals and short journeys. Because a diesel that never gets hot enough to clean out its particulate filter ends up with fuel diluting the engine oil, and thin oil wears the chain faster. If you catch it at the rattle stage, it is an expensive repair, but the engine lives. If you leave it, the chain eventually jumps or snaps. And because of the way this engine is built, the pistons then strike the valves. At that point, you are not repairing anything, you are buying another engine. And here is the part that makes owners angriest. The chains sit at the back of the engine against the bulkhead. To reach them, the gearbox has to come out. That turns what would be a straightforward job on most cars into a very large bill. and it is why so many of these engines get written off rather than fixed. There has been no recall on this in Britain, so unless your car is still under warranty, the cost is yours. So if you have a 2-lit diesel Jaguar, do this. Tomorrow morning before you go anywhere, start it from cold with the radio off and listen. If you hear a rattle that clears after a few seconds, get it looked at. Not next month, that week. And whatever else you do, keep the oil changes short and use the right specification oil on this engine that is not the dealer being greedy. That is the difference between a car and a scrap value. So beyond the engine, if you own a Jaguar, what does all this actually mean? First, on values. This is not as bad as you might fear. A brand pausing production does not make the existing cars worthless, and in some cases it does the opposite. The last F-Type, the last of the proper petrol cars, are already being treated as future classics. If you have a good one, do not panic sell it. The XE, the XF, and the F-Pace are a different matter. They are ordinary used cars in a market where the badge no longer means what it did, and they will be priced accordingly. If you are going to move one on, sooner is better than later. Second, on parts and servicing, there is no reason to worry here. Jaguar Land Rover is a large, profitable company. Land Rover is selling strongly, and these cars share a great deal of engineering. Parts and specialists will be around for a very long time. The dealer network is the thing to watch. It is being cut back and cut back hard. If your nearest main dealer closes, an independent Jaguar specialist will very likely do the work better and cheaper anyway. Find one now before you need one. Third, if you were thinking about buying a used Jaguar right now is a lot of car for the money, precisely because the brand is in the state it is in. Just check the service history and listen to it on a cold start. And finally, what happens next? The first new Jaguar is due this year. An electric 4-door built at Sully with a range of over 400 meters and well over 500 pounds horsepower. The price is expected to start somewhere around £100,000. By all accounts from people who have driven prototypes, it is a genuinely good car. But that was never really the question. The question is whether anybody will still be thinking about Jaguar when they are ready to spend that kind of money. Whether a buyer standing in a showroom with a Porsche and a Mercedes available to drive home today waits for a badge that spent 2 years selling nothing. William Lyons built this company on one idea: value for money. He wanted his cars to look and perform like they cost 3 times the price. Grace, space, and pace for people who were not rich. The new Jaguar is asking those same people to spend £100,000 or go away. So, tell me what you think in the comments. What did you own? An XJ, an S-Type, an XF, an XK? And do you believe there is any way back for Jaguar? Or is the leaping cat gone for good? Between all of us watching, this community has owned every Jaguar ever built, and your accounts are a better record of what happened than anything the company will ever publish. And if you think Jaguar is the worst of it, you have not seen what is happening to the rest of the British motor industry. There is another name in this country that is in even deeper trouble, and almost nobody is talking about it. That is the next video.